on demand.
Welcome to The Exchange. I'm Peter Armstrong. On tonight's show, it's all about moving things. Lots of money is sent across Canada every year in the form of equalization payments. Would improving the flow of goods between the provinces be a better way to even things out across the Federation? Plus, Bombardier has won a large order for train cars in Ontario. The organization behind Go Transit hopes this order stays on track in spite of previous late deliveries. And one day we may all drive autonomous vehicles. That doesn't mean you're off the hook, though, if something goes wrong. That's all ahead. But first, a foreign buyer looking for a property in Vancouver now has to dig a little deeper into their wallets. The tax on foreign buyers, announced just a few weeks ago, starts today, but its effects are already in play. Any real estate purchased in Metro Vancouver by a foreign national is now subject to an extra 15% land transfer tax. Buyers, sellers, and agents were given only a few weeks' warning. So there's been a reported flurry of activity to try to beat the deadline. For those who got in under the wire, no extra tax. But if the closing couldn't be moved up, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars will be added to the purchase price. And local agents say the effects have rippled through the entire Vancouver real estate market. Thomas Davidoff is a professor at the Sauder School of Business. Steve Saretsky is a realtor and founder of Van City Condo Guide. Thank you both for coming onto the show. Steve, I want to start with you with just a sense of how this is playing out on the ground. What impact have you seen from this tax in the lead up to it taking effect today?
Yeah, definitely into the lead up, there seemed to be a lot of commotion, kind of threw everyone off with no notice with realtors, lawyers, conveyancers, developers, basically everyone trying to get things done right away. A lot of buyers trying to change their dates, their closing dates before August the 2nd.
And there was talk about people trying to maybe pass the purchase off to somebody who is a Canadian national or a permanent resident, like changing the paperwork to try to avoid the tax. Did you hear much about that?
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously that big article that came out with one of the local realtors here that kind of somewhat crossed the line and advising clients that, you know, they had the option of putting into someone else's name, which of course is, definitely frowned upon. So a lot of that, but
a lot of talk, I guess. Thomas, the desired effect of this is to cool down the market. Is this tax and the specifics around it, will it have the desired impact?
I suspect it will. I don't see how this tax, for example, could increase prices in Vancouver. We know foreign buyers are a significant part of the market, not the majority of buyers according to Minister de Young's recent data, but there's a lot of foreign buyers. If they all walked away, I think prices would tumble quite fast. I don't think everybody will walk away. I think there'll be a combination of people willing to pay the tax, able to find relatives to buy on their behalf or other trusted parties. So I think prices will fall. How much really depends on the reactions of this very specialized group of affluent foreign buyers. So it'll be fascinating to watch.
And Steve, now that it's in place, do you have a sense that maybe the adjustment period has played out and now we get to see what will actually happen?
Yeah, so I think something like interesting to note is that although it may actually restrict the foreign buyers purchasing, it's kind of changed the mentality of locals here that are, you know, a little nervous to see. They kind of want to wait and see how the next few weeks and play out to see what happens with the prices.
And have you noticed that with your clients and among your peers that there has been sort of a cooling down of people wanting to wait and see what would happen after today to the market?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. I think it's everywhere in Vancouver, Ladner, South Delta. Anywhere you go right now, buyers are just really hesitant. They're kind of waiting to see what happens. It's the same thing with sellers too. They know that obviously right now is not the ideal time to put your home in the market because buyers are kind of, you know, waiting. So yeah, it's definitely a cooling off period right now to kind of wait and see what happens.
Thomas, I see you nodding at that. One of the drums that I beat on this show a fair bit is that we need the data. It's a simple box that we need to tick off to tell us, are you a permanent resident? What is your country of permanent residence? So we know what the impact of foreign buyers is. Are foreign buyers, as far as we know, really to blame for what's happening to the housing prices in Vancouver?
Well, look, if it was easy to build houses and it didn't matter if you were close to the ocean or not, the price impact of any group would be smaller. But given we have supply constraints that are never going to go away, of course, having very strong demand from buyers from overseas leads to higher prices than would exist without them. Minister DeYoung recently has started to collect this data on foreign buyers. It was a surprisingly small number, at least to me, in June. Updated July numbers suggested a much bigger fraction, about 10% over the whole period, which suggests 15% or more in the early part of July. It'll probably go up at the end of the July with people sneaking in under the limit. So yeah, definitely an important part of the market.
I'm going to put up a graph here for our viewers to see of it's the average home price in Vancouver, and you see at about 2003 or 4 or 5, it really starts to shoot up dramatically. And I think the concern for people outside of the region is if the cooling down that they want to have on the market means that those potential foreign buyers move somewhere else. Potentially, I think a lot of people talk about Toronto. It would have that impact here. Steve, are you hearing from people on the ground saying that they'll begin to look outside of either Vancouver or indeed BC?
I mean, I've certainly heard rumblings, speaking with other realtors that work predominantly with foreign buyers, that the sense seems to be they're going to look elsewhere. But I mean, whether that actually happens and how much of an impact that will actually have, remains to be seen.
And Thomas, it's a tricky balance to try to strike here, that on the one hand, you want to keep houses affordable for the younger generation coming in, but you don't want to see housing prices crater for the older generation going out. How tricky is that balance to try to strike, especially when you're actually implementing policy change here?
I think phenomenally difficult. I've spent a lot of the past week talking with my colleagues in economics and finance, trying to game out what's going to happen. And because we don't know what the behavior of foreign buyers will be, Steve mentioned, I think the fear of missing out is giving way to a fear of something else, messing up, or FOFU, I've been calling it. And, it's very hard to game this all out. There is certainly a nightmare scenario. I lived through the U.S. housing crisis in the mid-2000s. And you had economies that were very reliant on real estate for incomes. You had the so-called home ATM, people using their home equity to fuel investment purchases. You had the so-called drive to qualify, people getting in over their heads on mortgages in markets where the prices really didn't make sense. A lot of those ingredients are at play here, so I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but there certainly is a risk of a very nasty downturn if the foreign buyer really decides to walk away rather than pay the tax.
And Steve, can you feel that nervousness on the streets?
Yeah, I think definitely, like I said, even speaking with other realtors, a lot of people are kind of worried. I think the market was already starting to head towards slowing down, and I think this has certainly escalated things. But yeah, as Tom mentioned, the drive to qualify. I mean, we're seeing multiple offers out in areas like Mission, which is really just unheard of, and I think that's a prime example right there.
All right, we got to leave it there, but thank you both. This has been really helpful.
Thanks a lot.
Real pleasure. Thank you.